AGI, it's coming. Or is it? Sam Altman now says AGI, or human level AI, is not a super useful term. Oh, it's so close. Oh my god, we're gonna have AGI so soon. But now it seems like we're doing some backpedaling. Because people aren't buying the bullshit anymore. They've got to find a way to spin this so that, you know, they can still make some money because they've invested way more than they're actually earning. So now they're sort of kind of, you know, changing the goalposts, you know, redefining victory here. You know, we're going to deep dive a little bit into this. So Sam Altman saying artificial general intelligence, or AGI, losing its relevance as a term as rapid advances in the space make it harder to define the concept. Not sure how that makes any sense. I don't know how advances in AI tech would make it harder to define the concept. That doesn't really track. Kind of seems like maybe you just don't want to admit defeat on this. But, you know, I don't know. What do I know? You know, I'm just some jack. AGI refers to the concept of a form of artificial intelligence that can perform any intellectual task a human can. For years, OpenAI has been working to research and develop AGI that is safe and benefits all humanity. Oh my gosh, such a benefit. But now Sam's saying, I think it's not a super useful term. Blah, 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 blah. Latest ChatGPT 5 model moves the world closer to achieving AGI. Oh my god. The AI entrepreneur has previously said he thinks AGI could be developed in the reasonably close-ish future. That's a very non-committal statement here, but okay. Problem with AGI, Altman said, is that there are multiple definitions. Oh my god, the multiple definitions is just making it so hard. You know, one definition is an AI that can do a significant amount of work in the world. What? According to Altman, I've never heard anybody else describe AGI this way. However, that has its issues, because the nature of work is constantly changing. This is another cop-out. Like, what? Like, what people do for work changes, but the nature of work has always been the same. I think the point of all this is it doesn't really matter. Oh, man. And it's just this continuing exponential of model capability that we'll rely on for more and more things. So this is just like the laziest fucking thing ever here, where he's just being like, what does it even matter if we get AGI or not? You know, the models keep improving, so keep giving us money. But Altman isn't alone in raising skepticism about AGI and how people use the term. Okay. So why am I talking about this? You know, this is not exactly new news. This story is from August. Why am I talking about this now? I'm talking about this now because I opened up Reddit today and I see this shit. AI can play video games. Can it play StarCraft? This is from the StarCraft Reddit, and I apologize for the white theme here. I promise this is just because I'm on Firefox, but normally I look at this stuff on Chrome. And people are replying here, you know, guess you missed the whole DeepMind thing 8 years ago. Famously, it can. They built an AI and played it at BlizzCon 2018 called AlphaStar. Now you're like, oh, what the fuck is he talking about? What is this? What is DeepMind? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's look at that. This is DeepMind. This is the demonstration from 2018. Oh, God, there's so much background I have to give on this. But essentially, this was kind of before, like, the big rise of AI. And this is, like, right before it happened. And at the time, AI was making a lot of headlines because they were beating world-class players at strategy games, and they would just go up and up. So it was like they beat chess, basically. They beat, you know, all the top chess players, and it just got better and better the more it played against them. And then they did the same thing for Go, for the game Go. And if you don't know, the game Go is kind of notorious for this field because the number of possible moves is like exponentially huge. It's massive. So in order to do this by simply memorizing every possible move, it would be very, very difficult, right? So the idea was, if we can beat Go, then that means we must have achieved something here because it's such a complex game, right? However, if you look into how these models actually work and how they train them, then you'll see that they're being a little bit disingenuous here, because the way that these work is by playing against themselves. So they'll train the model based on previous professional games and the history of the game, right? They'll show it all the recorded games, looking at victory and loss and all of the moves that are happening in the game. And it uses these to build little tiny associations. By doing this, you end up with, this competing ecosystem where, through natural selection, you have the winning strategy beats the losing strategy. So the winning strategy becomes more prevalent. And then they try to put the winning strategy up against other strategies. And is there anything that beats the winning strategy? They just iterate on that millions and millions of times until you finally get it to a point where it's played so much of this game and it's seen all of the possible moves, all of the branches, all of the forks, and all of the different strategies. And it just knows based on previous experience, right? So it's still not actually reasoning and thinking about any new problems or anything like that. It's just observing past associations and calling on them. It's basically a really, really powerful search engine, right? And that's what it's doing. Okay. So then the idea was, well, what if we have it play StarCraft? StarCraft is even more complex than Go. The number of possible moves in StarCraft is insane. And to make this even better, StarCraft is not turn-based, it's real-time. If we can get it to play StarCraft, then surely we've achieved something. We've achieved some level of intelligence, even if it's a basic one. That was the idea, and they made a big deal out of it. It was at BlizzCon. BlizzCon was the end of the year, there was a tournament circuit for StarCraft, and BlizzCon was at the end of it. It was the global finals. It was a big deal. The prize pool for this was very large. And to be clear, DeepMind was not competing in the tournament. It was just a special event that happened at the tournament, just an exciting little detour for the fans to watch. In reality, it's marketing for Google and DeepMind. This was their project. They had been working on it for a very long time. The way this works is that DeepMind is playing using not a keyboard and mouse because it doesn't have hands, obviously. Instead, Blizzard made an API so that DeepMind could play the game directly, essentially. It's a little bit hard to explain, but it uses special layers and things like that. The point of this is that I'm trying to explain that it really, really, really relies heavily on previous experience to the point where they could only play, I believe, on one map, and they also only played one of the 3 races. And this is kind of a big deal for StarCraft because StarCraft is designed with asymmetric balance in mind, meaning that there are 3 different races in StarCraft. It's not like chess or Go where both players have the same pieces. Usually, you're facing somebody with who's playing with totally different pieces than what you have. So the level of strategic complexity here is very large. And by reducing it to just one matchup, Protoss versus Protoss, they radically reduce the amount of complexity in StarCraft. So they're already limiting what it's trying to do here by a lot. They're limiting the scope of what it needs to do. They're making the challenge easy for it, right? By reducing variables. Yeah, thank you, Deco. So then they did this tournament, this little mini tournament against Mana here, who you can see in this corner of the screen here. But he's playing up here. He's this side up here, right? And you can see we're looking right now at the player perspective of Mana. And that's important because StarCraft also has Fog of War. I apologize, there's so much context needed to understand this. But basically, if you don't have a unit nearby to give vision to an area, then you don't know what's happening in that area. So you can see on the screen here, there's this little lighter section here, right? And this is all lighter, but then when you leave this little bubble right here, it gets darker. That means Mana can't see anything that's happening in this dark area. He has no idea what's happening here, right? Same thing is true for Alpha Star. Alpha Star can't see anything outside of their vision, right? So when we're looking at the player perspective here, there's actually a giant Stalker army right here, and I apologize, the progress bar is above the minimap, but there's actually a giant Stalker ball that Alpha Star controls right here. And Mana can't see it, but he kind of knows it's there. And he's using what's called a warp prism to draw this army out of position, because Mana is actually pretty far behind in this game, and Alpha Star at this point in the game could basically move across the map and kill him, and there's basically nothing Mana could do, because Alpha Star is just that far ahead. However, Alpha Star is a dumb robot who does not think, and does not realize this and is just going off of previous games that it's observed, right? So it's not putting two and two together and realizing this. And Mana is doing a very clever thing where you can't see it right now, but there's a warp prism here, and he's going to fly it into the main base of Alpha Star, and Alpha Star is going to react to this and try to defend the warp prism by pulling the entire Stalker army back. There are many, many things that Alpha Star could do instead. Like, they could literally just warp in Stalkers on location. Probably 4 of them would handle this very easily. They could also make a Phoenix, and then that would shut down the prism. They could also just ignore it completely and just move across the map. Many things that Alpha Star could do. But instead, you'll see Alpha Star repeatedly go back into their base to try and deal with this warp prism, because it just does not understand the state of the game and that it's in a winning position. It's not capable of reasoning. So we're going to watch this a little bit right here.
He's trying to get upgrades. He's trying to utilize these units to counter Stalkers once again. It didn't
There's the
work
warp prism. That's the warp prism right there.
game, but maybe here.
Right here.
Yeah, I like the
You can see he's dropping the Immortals in here, drawing Alpha Star's attention.
positioning of the Observer on the left side of
That's the massive Stalker army I was referring to a second ago.
Mana. We can see that Mana knows about these Stalkers coming back as well. I think Mana was a little bit worried because the Stalker count was so...
There's all those Stalkers again, and you can see they're struggling to get up the ramp to deal with this prism right here. And this is, to be clear, in case this wasn't clear, this is high ground, so this is a cliff. So ground units can't walk between this, but this is a flying unit, so it can just fly across the cliff here.
so high that perhaps Alpha Star was actually able to just close out the game on the other side of the map. So Mana is
Now you see the Stalkers moving back out of the main base to try to catch the prism because it ran away.
pulling Alpha Star back. And these Immortals are... I mean, this is a dangerous game that Mana is playing, because if this Warp Prism goes
And now he's
down,
moving the prism back in.
the game goes down.
Yes, I think you're right. But if Mana can continually lure Alpha Star back, that's a way that Mana can actually gain an advantage.
Another Oracle being produced, by the way. I mean, one Stalker being
And here's the Stalkers again. You can see them on the minimap.
in range of these Immortals. Mana's absolutely
There they are.
striking back. And it's-
Mana's playing brilliantly.
Yeah.
Like, you see those Stalkers.
Trying to chase the prism again. Keep in mind, all Alpha Star would really have to do, they could split the Stalkers in half, and they could put half on the low ground here and half on the high ground here. Or they could even just keep a couple of them right here and just do nothing else. That's all they would have to do.
Stalkers continually going back and forth. Alpha Star either doesn't know or doesn't care about the
Strategic
observer
genius.
units. So Mana is just going in and out. Every time
AGI,
Alpha Star
it's
leaves,
right around the
Mana
corner,
comes back
guys.
in. Now this is kind of what I'm used to seeing when humans battle AIs, right? Is
Look
you're
at this shit.
finding something that they're doing that's a mistake, and you're making them do it over and over and over.
But, you know, in defense of Alpha Star is still up on 3 bases.
Oh, no,
Mana is on
absolutely.
2 bases. But you are spot on. What Mana was doing there was correct.
I feel like this needs the
I'm curious as to find out
the
why
Benny
Alpha
Hill
decided
theme.
that at this phase in the game, it feels like it needs another Oracle. While you would normally say in a professional game, you make a single Phoenix, you shut this Warp Prism down,
Yes.
and you move on with your business and you start focusing on attacking.
Yeah, as Rotterdam is saying here, a single Phoenix or a Void Ray would shut this down very, very easily. Very easily. And I'm pretty sure that that Alpha Star has a Stargate. There's really no reason. I know there's probably a lot of people who don't know StarCraft here, but yeah, there's really no reason for Alpha Star to be dealing with this. Like, they could have won the game already. Like, a full 2 minutes has gone by since we started watching this clip, and they could have just walked across the map, like, any number of ways. Like, anything other than what they did. But, you know, computer can't think.
And it does keep track of the Warp Prism, which is nice.
It's
but-
using the oracles.
Now it's finally figured out that you could put some Stalkers over here to chase this, right? But how much you want to bet that there's no Stalkers waiting over here?
to watch the Warp Prism, but you're very right. If you make one Phoenix here, Mana has to stop this Warp Prism play. Absolutely.
Now Mana has
And also, to be clear here, this section right here of the map is what's called dead space, meaning that ground units can't walk on it. So there's no way to get the Stalkers underneath the prism right here. You need a flying unit to catch it if it's hiding right here.
you would normally say a more powerful army, but I think the numbers are
Yes.
still heavily in favor of AlphaStar. Because as annoying as that immortal, kind of harassment that immortal attacks were in the main base of AlphaStar, I don't think it did that much damage.
Now,
So
I
really
don't
think that
actually
Blizzard
remember
shares
if
an
Mana
insane
wins
amount
this
of
game,
units somewhere.
so it'll be
There
interesting
are
to
a
see
lot of
here.
stalkers right there for AlphaStar. Mana's army counters it pretty darn well. Look at this, bringing over these other 2 Immortals. This is like 7 Immortals here.
This is interesting to see as well, because now once again, Mana's army is in the middle of the forces of AlphaStar, and this is where things get very interesting, especially with the new camera movement we went over before this game started.
Yeah, previously we saw AlphaStar be able to pick apart an army like this, but Mana's army is stronger than it was in that previous game. This is
Now, somehow, Mana is across the map and about to kill AlphaStar's natural. And they're only on 3 bases right now, and if they get wedged in this position right here, defending this becomes impossible, and they're basically in a losing position, so... If Mana manages to pull this off here, it's a great victory of man versus machine here. If I remember right, I think he wins. Whole point of me bringing that up was really just to highlight the warp prism action there as a great example of why these things do not reason or think or do any sort of judgments at all. They're just going off of previous associations from things they've previously observed. And the only reason that AlphaStar was able to have as much success as it did, because this was like a best of 5, and I think it won all 4 other games. And they just like played all 5 games just for fun. So technically, AlphaStar won, won the series, right? But I think this game alone is a great example of how it's just not capable of reasoning. I think if you see this and you still think that these things are actually performing reasoning, like you're kidding yourself. The way this works is that they played games of AlphaStar versus AlphaStar, of different versions of AlphaStar. They played against each other for like thousands of years, like because they played it at a like highly sped up game speed, so they were able to get in a lot of experience. And then they also fed it like a giant library of ladder games, and all of that stuff was used as training data, and that's how it's able to quote unquote play StarCraft. But as we just saw here, it's like it does not actually understand how to play StarCraft. It's just mimicking playing StarCraft. It's like a copycat. Okay. So, next here, you can see we've got a fucking pile of tabs here. 6 years ago is a long time ago, though, in terms of AI. I love that you said this, Grub. Because we're going to journey back even further than that. Let's go back fucking 20 years, 25 years. Let's go back to 2001. Oh my god. Ancient times, 2001. Now, if you guys are like, oh man, this AI stuff, it's so new and exciting, there's never been anything like this before. We've never seen anything like this before. It's incredible new technology. Well, I've got news for you, my friend.
There's a reason why we've asked people to sign NDAs here, and there's a reason why we're asking people to be stealth-like. And the reason is that this is a big fucking idea. And what's
A
interesting
big
about
idea.
big fucking idea
Huge.
is like a lot of big fucking ideas. It's simple. It's a simple idea that everybody should have thought of, but we thought about it first.
When I heard this pitch, it blew my mind. It was the biggest duh, I think, that I had had in my entire life. And why hasn't somebody thought of this?
I can't remember exactly how the idea came up, but all of a sudden it was just there. Well, it occurred to us that
Magic.
messenger programs, people already have them, they know how to use them, they're comfortable with them.
What made me think it was a big deal was when we showed it to the venture capital guys, and a couple of days later we went back to their offices and they were all using it.
From the idea to the first round.
Venture capital guys, VC. Oh man, they're the best judgments of technology.
Launch, and hopefully one of the fastest companies to be ultra successful.
What ActiveBuddy is doing is completely revolutionizing the way instant messaging is used. Today, if I want to talk to Susie, Susie's online and we can have a real-time conversation. What ActiveBuddy has done is replace Susie with a computer robot that has information services embedded. I can
Because that's what we want, you know. We don't want to communicate with other people. We want to replace those other people with robots.
ask that robot to answer certain questions. At launch, we'll have a range of services that you can access on ActiveBuddy. As we move forward, we'll be adding some, but what we started with were the things that people seem to be using on the internet all the time and can do it virtually instantaneously.
The cool thing about ActiveBuddy is it puts all of those things in one place right at your fingertips whenever you need it.
The only asset you have, the only tradable currency is, you know, how quickly can you move, and that's the only thing that you need.
Oh my God.
One of the great benefits of our service is that there's nothing to download. What somebody does is they go to their buddy list and you add ActiveBuddy to your buddy list just as you would the name of a friend. Once ActiveBuddy is on your buddy list,
I love the resolution.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you want to know the weather in New York,
Oh my God, I have to strain my eyes.
America Online, type in news, AOL, boom, you get 10 headlines.
That's just amazing.
Okay, what information do you need?
Incredible.
Okay, I can get you a quote, just 1 second.
Almost any type of
This is my favorite right here. This was totally not a staged moment of this guy on the phone being like, what information do you need? All right, I can get that for you.
data, any type of news, any type of information can be pumped into that window.
Look at this laptop.
0.6875.
We also tie the data into some things that are useful for kids, such as dictionaries and thesaurus, so define the word dog.
Oh, he made it educational. Nice, nice.
When you do a web search and you say search Apple, it will come up with the top 10 links for Apple. You can click in the instant messenger window and it opens up a web browser for more information. So the instant messaging application works
incredible
with the web.
This sounds kind of familiar. This sounds kind of like Gemini in Google search or what is it? In Bing. Gosh, you know, weird, right? I don't know. Oh yeah, listen to that music though. Fuck yeah, it's Crystal Method. You young Zoomers don't even know.
ActiveBuddy has something like 21 content providers today, and the list keeps growing. The major content providers are companies like Reuters, the leading information provider worldwide, and CBS Sportsline, one of the largest internet websites covering the sports industry.
Almost any type of data, any type of news, any type of information, also
wow,
can be pumped.
Anything.
The internet doesn't stand still. 10 years ago, there was no World Wide Web. 3 years ago, hardly anybody used instant messaging. Today, instant messaging is one of the most used applications on the web. Wherever instant messaging goes, ActiveBuddy goes. From RIM to Palm Pilots to cell phones, we'll be there. Just imagine what's going to happen to instant messaging when ActiveBuddy pumps information into that window. We think it's going to explode.
Yeah! ActiveBuddy! Now, I can hear a lot of you are like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck is ActiveBuddy? Well, ActiveBuddy was the company name for Smarter Child. And a lot of you probably don't even know what that is either. Smarter Child was a chatbot. One of the first like natural language chatbots. This was something that you could type to it in basic English sentences, and it would be able to understand what you're saying and respond to you in a way that, you know, seems pretty human. You know, that was pretty impressive for 2001. You might kind of understand the context a little bit better of why they were like so hype about that company and about this chatbot being able to do this stuff. In reality, what this really, you know, did for you, it was kind of like a more natural language form of Google search, where, you know, rather than having to see, gosh, a lot of you guys are like so young that you have no idea what I'm talking about. But back in the day, you used to have to do a bunch of fancy stuff with like plus and quotes and things like that in order to get a really solid Google search to actually find the information that you wanted. Because otherwise, like, the search engine optimization was just like not there. And things, you know, you would get all sorts of stuff that like wasn't relevant to what you were searching for very frequently. So this was actually kind of cool because you could type to it in pretty like natural language. and it would respond to you in natural language, you know, and you're like, oh my God, you know, I can understand this information. But the thing is, it really wasn't that useful because what it could get for you was very surface level information. You know, it could get you stock prices. It could get you, you know, very famously, they did like a partnership with Fandango. So you could actually get like movie tickets through Smarter Child, which is kind of interesting. You know, when a movie was playing at a theater near you and stuff like that. And you'd be able to find these things like pretty easily without having to like go to the website and like look for your local theater and like click 7 links and to search for the movie title and all this stuff. So like it was actually kind of convenient for being able to do that, you know, which is impressive, right? However, what most people used it for was not that. He was thinking about just going straight into penis, but instead he's going, do you like penis? The Smarter Child would stop responding to you if you were rude enough to it. It would detect enough profanity that it's like, it would stop responding to you until, and this is the fun part, until you apologize to it. If you apologize to it, it would talk to you again. This was the source of endless hours of enjoyment. It was great, okay? But what it was not was an incredibly impressive, you know, cognizant, conscious, sentient thinking entity. This was not, you know, and people were very well aware of this. Like, it was obvious, you know. It would lose context very easily when you try to get into longer conversations. It very frequently gets confused about what you're talking about. It's basically just responding to the last message. It doesn't really have the ability to kind of keep a conversation in its memory. And the way it worked was basically like a very rudimentary form of modern LLMs. The way this thing worked was by looking for keywords and trying to understand sentence structure and like adverbs and things like that to try to comprehend what the person was asking. And then it would rely upon a library of thousands and thousands of pre-written responses that the employees of the company spent years writing. And it would pull upon those to give its responses. Now just think about this and just scale that up. And what is that? That's an LLM. Like, it's the same things that LLMs do, where it just breaks sentences down into, although with LLMs it goes even further than breaking it down into words and sentences. It breaks words down into individual chunks. And then instead of relying on a library of thousands of pre-written responses that were written manually by the employees, instead it relies upon a giant library of things that humans have written all across the internet. But it's the same concept. It just has a much larger library of training and, you know, more complex structure in how it like forms sentences and how it comprehends sentences. But the underlying concept of this is basically the same thing as LLMs today. You might be wondering, what the fuck happened to this company? You know, where did they go? You know, it's such a promising technology. What was the fate of this company? Why is this not in everybody's smartphones today? You know, why is nobody using this anymore? You know, what happened to it? They were bought by Microsoft in 2006. The parallels, they just don't stop. So here's a press release from Microsoft in 2006 talking about this, and they're saying, with the addition of Windows Live Service agents to our portfolio, businesses can simplify access to information, streamline issue resolution, minimize support costs, and improve customer satisfaction. Xbox will be the first group within Microsoft to use Windows Live Service agents. So what this actually became was all of those chatbots that you would interact with on support websites. If you remember before AI LLMs took off, there were like more rudimentary forms of it in, you know, company websites. That was based on this. It's Smarter Child. That's what this comes from. It's from Smarter Child into Colloquis into Microsoft Service Agents. It's the same technology. So that was the fate of this. Now, today we've got much more, you know, much more complex things with LLMs. You know, oh, it's so impressive, right? So great. Except is it really that great? Because the more researchers seem to dive into this stuff, the more it seems like maybe it's not really as capable as people are letting on. We're going to dive into a little bit of articles about that, starting with large language models, lack essential metacognition for reliable medical reasoning. Metacognition, a lot of people probably don't know what the fuck that is. Metacognition is just learning about learning. It's learning about the process of learning, like trying to understand how we learn. This is important because you need to be able to understand how you understand information in order to improve at your understanding of information. AI is not capable of doing this process. It's essentially the short version of this. So saying knowledge of cognition encompasses awareness of one's own cognitive processes, such as identifying biases. Regulation of cognition refers to skills for managing one's own learning process, including self-evaluation and monitoring. In healthcare, these abilities are crucial for professionals to handle complex, uncertain situations and continuously improve their practice. Understanding whether LLMs can gauge their knowledge and handle uncertainty is essential for their safe integration into clinical environments. So this study is kind of born out of the recent desire to use AI for medical diagnosis, which is one of the first applications that this was sort of championed for, where people are saying, oh, it's going to be really good at this. But unfortunately, it's not really the best. Because, a real doctor can recognize when there's a bias. They can be like, hey, wait a second, our testing method or, this, that, or the other thing, it might be a little bit flawed here because we're getting a lot of reports of people who are saying, we got false negative, false positive, whatever. Maybe there's something wrong in our methodology and we need to examine that a little bit more. And maybe the way I'm thinking about this is wrong because, I've been under, thinking under this framework and this paradigm, and now I have all this information that's conflicting with that. And, maybe I need to reevaluate how I'm thinking about this. Maybe I have a bias here that I need to address. The AI is never going to do that. It's just not capable of doing that. And that's dangerous. People could die. Maybe we shouldn't apply AI here. I could dive more into this, but basically what they did was they had a bunch of multiple choice questions, and then they did a bunch of clever things where they would malform questions. They would ask about a fictional organ that doesn't actually exist. They would modify questions, make things unanswerable and things like that, and AIs would confidently answer incorrectly. However, they do have different results of accuracy. Like GPT-4 is actually much better than a lot of the other ones, to its credit, right? And also, it was better at identifying when it's incorrect. To be totally fair, it is possible for a lot of these models to admit when they don't know something, right? Really, the main problem is that it's not thinking, it's not reasoning, and it's just going off of previous information. That's still the core problem with all of this technology. Fundamentally, the technology is not capable of what people are hyping it up to be capable of. It's not a matter of if we just plug more data into it or give it more training time. It's just never going to reach that point because it's just we're approaching the problem from the wrong angle. It's just we're never going to get there from here. Next, AIs not reasoning at all. How this team debunked the industry hype. In a paper published last month, the authors, name I can't pronounce, and colleagues at Arizona State University took apart the reasoning claims through a simple experiment. What they concluded is that chain of thought reasoning is a brittle mirage, and it is not a mechanism for genuine logical inference, but rather a sophisticated form of structured pattern matching, is what I've been saying. But of course, Sam Altman says the singularity is imminent, and here's why. You gotta keep that in mind. The singularity, it's imminent, guys. It's coming, it's right around the corner. The term chain of thought is commonly used to describe the verbose stream of output that you see when a large reasoning model, such as GPT, whatever the fuck, or DeepSeek, shows you how it works through a problem before giving the final answer. That stream of statements isn't as deep or meaningful as it seems, right, Zhao and the team? The empirical successes of chain of thought reasoning lead to the perception that these large language models engage in deliberate inferential processes. But an expanding body of analysis reveals that LLMs tend to rely on surface-level semantics and clues rather than logical procedures. LLMs construct superficial chains of logic based on learned token associations, often failing on tasks that deviate from common sense heuristics or familiar templates. Again, what I've been saying. These things can only go off of what they've previously seen, and the second you ask it to try to do something new, it breaks down completely. But don't worry, guys. Sam Altman says the singularity is imminent. It's imminent, guys. It's imminent. And I'm sure these journalists writing about this stuff have no incentive to hype this shit up and make it seem more interesting than it actually is. None at all. They hold no responsibility here. And that's where we kind of reach this article here, which is kind of like the nail in the coffin for the AI bubble, if you ask me. This came out not too long ago, about a month ago, and it made a big splash. And I really enjoyed how big of a splash this made, because I stumbled on this article not realizing that everybody else was also reading it. And I was like, yes, fucking preach. Like, I love this. This really makes it clear. I recommend you read this if you haven't seen it before, but I'll highlight this section here. Basically, the point of this is that language is not reasoning, and that using language as the like the medium for reasoning is never going to get you what you want. We're never going to reach AGI using language as our base. It's just not possible, because reasoning is not based in language. This is how they're demonstrating that. You know, they go through a whole list of arguments here, but I think this is really the most compelling right here. So first, using MRIs, we can see different parts of the human brain activating when we engage in different mental activities. As it turns out, when we engage in various cognitive activities, solving a math problem, say, or trying to understand what's happening in the mind of another human, different parts of our brain light up as parts of networks that are distinct from our linguistic ability, meaning that there are entirely separate sections of our brain, or not separate, but entirely different sections of our brain that are devoted to different types of tasks, and that language is one of those sections, but it does not control or is not involved in the rest. Second, studies of humans who have lost their language abilities due to brain damage or other disorders demonstrate conclusively that this loss does not fundamentally impair the general ability to think. The evidence is unequivocal. There are many cases of individuals with severe linguistic impairments who nevertheless exhibit intact abilities to engage in many forms of thought. These people can solve complex math problems, follow nonverbal instructions, understand the motivations of others, and engage in reasoning, including formal logical reasoning and causal reasoning about the world. Interesting! Almost like language and reasoning are not the same fucking thing. Crazy. And again, and this is, again, from about a month ago, and this is, what, like 2 weeks before that. So-called reasoning models are more efficient, but not more capable than regular LLMs. So this is comparing LRMs, which is kind of the new thing where it shows its work and shows the steps. However, researchers at some university in Shanghai and this other university found that reinforcement learning for reasoning models raises the success rate for individual answers, but does not help models solve new types of problems. Models only succeed at tasks they already managed before. Crazy! It's almost like this is a core problem of this technology and it's never going to be solved. You're thinking, these are all just researchers trying to make a name for themselves, you know? These guys don't really know what they're talking about, you know? They're not in the companies. They don't really know what's available. They don't know how deep, you know, AI has really gotten. They don't understand, you know, Apple and ChatGPT and Google, you know, they've got all sorts of crazy innovations. You know, if you really looked under the hood, you would see. It's incredible, this technology and what it can do. Well, why don't we ask Apple? From June of this year, the illusion of thinking. Understanding the strengths and limitations of reasoning models via the lens of problem complexity. This is from Apple. And they did a study where they looked at, and I'll just show you here, where they looked at, this is the problem it's trying to solve here, where you have disks on pegs here, and you can only remove them in order. You know, you can't remove disk 2, you have to remove disk 1 first before you can remove disk 2, right? And the objective is to get all of these disks over onto this peg, get them all in order right here, right? This is the target state right here. You know, they're comparing Claude 3.7 and Claude 3.7 plus thinking. So this is the LRM version, and this is the LLM version. And we're looking at the complexity and number of disks and the accuracy right here. We can see as the number of disks goes above like 3, the standard Claude model falls off dramatically. The LRM version of it does a little bit better. But then when you get up to like 8, they both just crater. And they can't figure it out. What do they say about this after doing their results here? Through extensive experimentation across diverse puzzles, we show that frontier LRMs face a complete accuracy collapse beyond certain complexities. Moreover, they exhibit a counterintuitive scaling limit. Their reasoning effort increases with problem complexity up to a point, then declines despite having an adequate token budget. So it's not a problem of like RAM or memory. Like it doesn't like not have the capability. It's not a problem of like the brain isn't large enough. It's just fundamentally not capable of doing this. By comparing LRMs with their standard LLM counterparts under equivalent inference compute, we identify 3 performance regimes. 1. Low complexity tasks where standard models surprisingly outperform LRMs. That's kind of what they're showing here. And 2, medium complexity tasks where additional thinking in LRMs demonstrates advantage. So some of them do better with the LRMs, right? But then when you give it high complexity tasks, both models experience complete collapse. We found that LRMs have limitations in exact computation. They fail to use explicit algorithms and reason inconsistently across puzzles. Weird. It's almost like it's not actually reasoning and it's just imitating reasoning. We also investigate the reasoning traces, just traces of reasoning, in more depth, studying the patterns of explored solutions and analyzing the model's computational behavior, shedding light on their strengths, limitations, and ultimately raising crucial questions about their true reasoning capabilities. So there's real questions about whether these things are actually capable of doing this. And here's where I'd like to make a comparison. I know I'm not the first person to make this comparison, but this just reminds me a lot of a Rube Goldberg machine. I'm sure most of you know what this is, but Rube Goldberg machines are, you know, a fun, complex way to do a very simple task. So here, we're trying to staple this piece of paper, and we do this by setting off an alarm clock, which knocks a thing off into this, which spins this around, which knocks this over, which pours this into this bucket, which cuts this rope with these scissors right here, which drops this boot onto the stapler, which staples the paper. And I just can't help but think of LRMs in the same way, where you're looking at the LRM and it's like, you give it a question like, how do I staple this paper? And it goes, oh, well, first you ring the alarm clock, and then you move this over here. Like, these steps are completely superficial. When it's showing you its reasoning, it's completely pointless. It's just imitating other people showing their reasoning. It's not actually doing that itself. It's just imitating it because it thinks that's what you're expecting it, and it's been trained to give you what you're expecting. But don't worry, guys. Don't worry, guys. AGI, right around the corner. Right around the corner. Just listen to Sam Altman. He's so trustworthy.
Let's go back and look closer at Altman's early days in the tech industry. Altman's first big deal was selling his first company, Looped, a service for locating your friends. That's something that apparently needs lots of users to work, or else you're just locating yourself.
The operative idea seems to be ubiquity. I mean, get it out there in more ways than you can possibly imagine.
And make it available to everybody.
But the whole time, Looped refused to say how many users they had. Altman just insisted there were, quote, way more users than any other similar service. It turns out, though, that towards the end, Looped only had 500 users. When
like 500 more than zero.
It was 100 times more than that, and that he'd provide evidence. He never did. Just trust me, bro.
So what do you think, guys? Do we trust Sam Altman? Is AGI around the corner? What do you think? I don't really have a way to end this. I probably should have prepared some sort of a grand ending to this, but I literally just saw this Reddit thing in the morning. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. People are still buying this shit. I just went down the rabbit hole and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna lay it all out. I'm gonna make my case for why I think this is bullshit. So what do you think? Do you guys agree with me? Or am I a dumbass who just doesn't understand? And oh man, it's such an incredible technology, and I'm just not getting it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Oh my god.